Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 RSM Data Dive show. Fresh look, ready for the last week of the PGA Tour fall portion of the schedule. We've got a lot to get into, a lot of leaderboards to look at, a lot of data to cover, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there at your disposal. It's going to make you a much better gambler, a much smarter DFS player. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to my social media. This is Twitter and Instagram. I posted some research today to both Twitter and Instagram regarding a pattern from previous winners of the RSM. So if you want to see that summary of the research, give me a follow at those two links. But if you would like to see the more in-depth research, give me a follow to the link at Twitch. Was there for quite a while this morning, critiquing and looking back at the Houston Open, how well that mixed condition model worked, and then doing a lot of the research for the RSM, figuring out who qualifies and who doesn't. There are about 20 or so players based on the criteria that I put forth earlier today on Twitter and Instagram. So jump in chat. I want to hear from you all, see if you all can guess who those players are, who some of them might be. Some of them might surprise you and who it's not. Little bit of foreshadowing there. But if you want to see all of that content and more, give me a follow to the links in the description. And then finally, we're live. Chat is open. I want to hear from you all. As I mentioned, can you guess who some of the players are based on the criteria I put forward on social media? Have you seen the withdrawals? There are 4, and I'll get to those once we get to the Fantasy National portion. Did you check the odds boards today? Once the odds boards came out, I fired off 2 wagers immediately. Talked about a couple of players last night that I was excited about. I think one player is pretty fairly priced, and one, his odds are just way too high. So I fired off both of those and going to continue to look at the odds boards throughout the week, especially tomorrow as I prep my mixed condition model. But to do the mixed condition model, I need to have a lot of sound data and a sound understanding of what I'm looking at. So let's do that together. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 RSM. And we start over at Windfinder. As I mentioned last night, this was probably going to be where we started. Pardon me, let me get some of this stuff out of the way. The RSM has traditionally had a little bit of wind in its as a factor, I guess, is the way I'm trying to phrase this. And you can see we don't have the ability to have super forecast just yet, 3 days out from the tournament. But you see there is quite a bit of wind forecast for Thursday. Not so much Friday and Saturday, but the temperatures are rather chilly. The Wednesday, you have a high near 70, but then it drops to into the mid 50s and then approaches 60 throughout the weekend. And then you have a little bit of some wind coming in, looks like Monday. So if that gets pushed up into Sunday, that could make the championship round pretty interesting. But for right now, there does appear to be a little bit of wind in the forecast. And again, with 3 days out, not entirely sure we can say if there's an AM PM split, how much of a factor we need to put into it. But did want to show this as the RSM has had wind be a pretty big focal point at times in the past. Understandable since it is right on the coast. We are in St. Simons Island, Georgia. So, going to exit out of Windfinder. Let's go straight on over into Fantasy National. I've got a couple of filters already set, but I mentioned that there were 4 field changes. 4 players that I have seen that have withdrawn already. This is about 6 or 6:30 Eastern time. Those 4 players are Siwoo Kim, Brendan Steele, Eric Van Rooyen, and Mark Hubbard. Those 4 have withdrawn. So as we go through the night, when I see one of those 4 players, I will attempt to make sure I remember that they are no longer in the field. P, how you doing? Thanks for jumping in chat. How was your weekend? Didn't see you last night. Hopefully you had a promising and successful Houston Open. It was a pretty strong showing on all accounts, especially for quite a few of my viewers. I had a decently strong showing myself, so hopefully you shared in that success, but thanks for jumping in chat and able to catch the show as you normally do. So those are the 4 field changes. Let's go ahead and cover a few things here from last night, do a little bit of a recap, and then we'll start hitting the prior leaderboards. So you can see I have set this to when rounds are easy, and the Houston Open data is in. So these lists will probably change a little bit from last night. So when a round has been easy since the start of 2022, your top performers have been Seamus Power, Tom Hoge, Tony Finau, Taylor Moore, Andrew Putnam, JJ Spawn, David Lipsky, Jason Day, Will Gordon, and Matt Kuchar. So no change at the very top. Seamus Power still number 1 when it is easy. I do believe Tom Hoge was 3rd or so last night, so not a lot of change, but a little bit. Probably not when easy, because the Houston Open definitely played difficult for 3 rounds. I believe the other one was average. Have to check on that. Yeah, 3 rounds of difficult and average, so didn't change probably too much. And we know the short course absolutely won't change, or at least it shouldn't, as Houston is very long. But anyway, there is a look at your top 10 performers when a round has been easy in 2022. Let's go ahead and remove that. We'll cover the short course for the RSM. So that same time frame since the start of 2022, your top performers when a course has been short, measured 7,200 yards or less per Fantasy National. Those players are Seamus Power, JT Poston, Brian Harmon, Matthew Neesmith, Keith Mitchell, Ben Griffin, Ryan Armour, Denny McCarthy, Tom Hoge, and Andrew Putnam. So still, Seamus Power, number 1 when it is short and number 1 when it is easy. Andrew Putnam is now top 10 in both. Tom Hoge is top 10 in both. So 3 very strong names to consider as you are diving into the majority of your prep this week. But the last thing I want to do in terms of a full look of 2022, we just looked at Windfinder. Let's take a look at moderate and windy conditions, see who has played the best in those scenarios. So again, since the start of 2022, your top performers in moderate and windy conditions: Tony Finau, Chris Kirk, Tom Hoge, Scott Piercy, Matt Kuchar, Brian Harmon, Brandon Wu, Keith Mitchell, Sepp Straka, and Alex Smalley. So Tom Hoge is in the top 10 in all 3 aspects: short, windy, and easy. Tony Finau's in there, I think all 3, at least 2 of the 3. Matt Kuchar's now in 2 of the 3. Brian Harmon's in 2 of the 3. Keith Mitchell's in 2 of the 3. So quite a bit of overlap here in terms of total performance when a round is easy versus short versus windy. So good stuff there. I'm going to remove that. Another facet that we looked at last night, we know that we are on Bermuda greens. I have been pretty confident in putting the fast filter on. The reason being, from the historic conditions. Last year, the Seaside course played fast twice and averaged twice, and really they slowed it down due to the wind. They did let the greens get lightning fast in 2021, but mostly it has been fast. For the most part, it has been fast. So if it plays to average, then I'll be a little cold to that. If it plays to lightning, I will be cold to that. But I am pretty darn confident that we can filter on fast Bermuda. So again, since the start of 2022, your top performers on fast, or your best putters, excuse me, not total performers, but your best putters on fast Bermuda greens have been Kevin Kisner, Martin Trainer, Scott Brown, Brian Gay, Davis Riley, Scott Stallings, Denny McCarthy, Ben Griffin, Rory Sabatini, and Troy Merritt. Let's see. Riley was there last night in terms of easy rounds, I believe. I don't know. I can't remember if he was there tonight now after the update. McCarthy's always going to be there for putting. Ben Griffin has been up there for, I believe, the wind, and now in putting. But again, only 5 rounds, so take it with a little bit of grain of salt. But there's a look at your top Bermuda or fast Bermuda putters in 2022. I'm going to remove these filters. We're going to take a look at two more metrics here. We're going to narrow this in. We're going to look at strokes gained approach and around the green as we did last night. So since July 1st, essentially going back to the John Deere, your top strokes gained approach players, and again, double checking, making sure I don't have any filters selected. Your top strokes gained approach players are Tom Hoagie, Trey Mullinex, Jason Day, Tony Finau, Ben Griffin, Lee Hodges, Russell Knox, Sang You'll Know, Callum Tarrant, and Jonathan Bird. Skipped Mark Hubbard and Siwoo Kim. Those two have withdrawn along with Mark Hubbard. Oh, actually, I think I said I skipped Hubbard. Siwoo Kim, Brendan Steele, excuse me. So the 4 players again: Mark Hubbard, Siwoo Kim, Brendan Steele, and Eric Van Rooyen are the 4 that have withdrawn. But there's a look at your top strokes gained approach players in the past 4 or so months, and then strokes gained around the green. We're going to take a look and see that I think this is going to be another factor this week. We saw it a little bit in terms of the course breakdown last night, but your top strokes gained around the green players since July 1st. Those players have been Ben On, Scott Piercy, Stephan Jaeger, Robbie Shelton, David Lipsky, Tyson Alexander, Eric Barnes, Andrew Putnam, Bill Haas, and Mackenzie Hughes. Tyson Alexander, the incredible Houston Open that he had, solo second. Jaeger has been playing very, very well lately. Ben On, Scott Piercy, Mac Hughes, these players, no real surprise in terms of around the green performance. One thing that I definitely am going to do, I'm going to have the Seaside course breakdown up, and I'll refer to this mainly, but I do want to show you the Sea Island Resort Plantation Course and run through that very, very quickly, as there are 2 courses that are being played from the first 2 rounds, and why we saw some of the numbers that we did last night in Microsoft Excel. So the Plantation Course is a par 72. It does play easy, but you do have 4 par 5s. Now the par 4s are generally more important here at the Plantation Course as opposed to Seaside. You see the par 5s are pretty mitigated, but a lot of the reason why we saw the metrics we did, we saw that there was a really big number in par 4s 350 to 400. Well, that is where this is coming from. There are more par 4s 350 to 400 on the Plantation Course than over at Seaside, so that makes a lot more sense. But again, you still have the same 2 par 3s that are 200 to 225 and 2 par 5s that are 550 to 600 that are definitely more important than their counterparts in that regard. So I definitely wanted to bring that up, show you, and explain to you or give you a reason why I'm going to be showing you birdies are better instead of just birdies. Even though there aren't a lot of eagle chances on the Seaside course, you can see that you have a 2.5, a 2.5, and a 4 over on the Plantation Course. So there are a few eagle opportunities on the alternate course. So we will definitely be looking at birdies or better this week as opposed to just birdies gained. But anyway, there is that. Let's go ahead and move straight on into some new data, look at some leaderboards, try to figure out what metrics and filters we want to focus on this week. So we're going to start with the birdies and bogeys. Let's move on over to the historic leaderboards. And we saw last night, at least in terms of Microsoft Excel, it said that the birdies were much more important. I am going to tend to agree with that, but we'll see. A quick look here. Let's do the top 21. Again, just due to ties, and I believe you can see all of those players. Yep. Only one is negative in bogeys avoided, and it's fairly darn close to field average. So not, I mean, there's a slight lean to birdies gained here. You have a 10.2 and some very strong correlation. You have a 7.2, very strong correlation, but the bigger number is in birdies, at least from last year. So that would lend to a birdies gained favor. We'll check 2021 if Fantasy National decides that it wants to cooperate. Here, a little bit more pronounced in the upper part of the leaderboard. If you go to the top 14, nobody is negative in birdies, and again, only one in bogeys, but not by that much. And then if you move on down into the top 22 down here, you have the same amount, 2 and 2. But again, just a quick eyeball, there's a 10.1 from Patton Kazire. I imagine he's the top. 10.1. Now you do have a missed cut here from Cam Davis. That's high in the birdies gained. Looks like he was rather atrocious at avoiding double bogeys. But a 10.1, 7.3. A little bit stronger correlation in terms of bogeys avoided, but again, the bigger number in birdies gained. So I would say 2 straight years of a birdies gained favor. And then, per usual, we'll look at 2020 just to confirm. This time, the top 19, there's one player that's negative in birdies. But again, the highest number I see on a quick eyeball is a 9.7 from Webb. And look at that massive amount of correlation up top. Massive amount. The top 5, all top 10. Bogeys avoided. Again, strong correlation, but nowhere near the number. 7.3 being the highest, 9.7 here. So I'm quite clearly seeing a birdies gained favor here. Eagles, not, I mean, they happen, so we're going to look at birdies are better. But I don't see much in terms of looking at Eagles by themselves. Funny to see Cameron Davis in 2021. Let's take a look at double bogeys avoided. Not a big number there. 2021 very quickly. We have, again, another 1.1. So it does not look like there's much there, even though Microsoft Excel showed a pretty sizable number there. So when we move on over to this year's field, let's take a look at quite a few different scenarios here. The first one, and the one that I'm probably going to use in the mixed condition model only because it is as much of an apples to apples. Birdies refers to scoring, so I want to use the scoring filter. So your top birdies or better gained players when a round is easy in 2022. Those players are Tony Finau, Seamus Power, Taylor Montgomery, Taylor Moore, Tom Hoge, Ben Griffin, Davis Riley, Scott Brown, Michael Thompson, and Matt Kuchar. Again, Seamus Power, number 1 in strokes gained total. He's number 2 in terms of birdies or better. Birdies gained, number 8 in bogeys avoided. Taylor Moore, strong all the way around as well. Tom Hoge, strong all the way around, top 10 in all 3. Matt Kuchar, top 10 in all 3 in terms of birdies or better, birdies and bogeys. Really the only player that's excelling at getting eagles when it's easy is Taylor Montgomery. But again, not a lot of eagles on this on these courses. There are enough to look at birdies or better, but not enough to single out eagles alone. Now, in terms of opportunities, you've got Taylor Moore, Tom Hoge, Tony Finau. These players are giving themselves plenty of opportunities to convert. Trey Mullinax, S.H. Kim. He's not necessarily avoiding the bogeys very well, but he is getting the birdies are better, and giving himself plenty of opportunities. So good stuff here. Let's also take a look at birdies are better when it is short. That is certainly a factor that you don't want to ignore, but I am very confident, and I can tell you right now that I'm going to have birdies are better when it is easy. In the final mixed condition model, it is not a guarantee. It could, but it is not a guarantee that I'll have birdies are better when it is short. So, when a course is short, your top birdies are better gained players are Seamus Power, Ben Griffin, John Huh, Adam Svensson, Stuart Sink, David Lingmerth, Sam Ryder, Sean O'Hare, Troy Merritt, and Tom Hoge. So a few overlapping names here, but quite a few new ones as well. Seamus Power, number 1 when it's short. He was number 2 when it's easy in terms of birdies are better. Ben Griffin was up there. Troy Merritt and Tom Hoge were up there. But now you're getting some new names. Adam Svensson, Stuart Sink, David Lingmerth, Sean O'Hare. Some of these players are now rising into the top 10 if you are going to focus on short course metrics as opposed to easy course metrics. Love some Seamus, absolutely. He number 1 in strokes gained total when it's easy, number 1 strokes gained total when it's short. There's a lot to like with Seamus Power. I have been low on him this fall, incorrectly, admittedly. There's a lot to like here, and his odds today opened up. I would say they were fair. They were still a little high, so I fired off his number immediately. I think when he opened, I think he was 20-1. Again, probably a fair number, especially with Tony Finau garnering as much attention as he is. But 20-1 does seem fairly high for somebody who is number 1 in strokes gained total, short and easy. And Seamus Power was probably the first player I started considering in terms of in-depth research. But the other player that I mentioned in last night's show, his number was way too high. I fired him off immediately. It was way too high. But we'll get to him, I'm sure, eventually. But there's a look at your top 10 birdies or better gained players when it is short. But again, I'm more focused, going to be on the easy. But pretty clearly that we're going to be looking at birdies gained. And when that's the case, as long as a course yields an acceptable amount of eagles, and RSM will, then I'll look at birdies or better. Let's move on over to fairways and greens and driving distance and the ball striking page view. And I mentioned last night it was going to be interesting to see if we could find any of these metrics that were going to matter the most. And again, I'll highlight the top 21 due to ties. Surprisingly, distance here was a little bit. Now, these numbers aren't big by any means, but these players were positive in relation to the field last year. Fairways did not look like it mattered at all, at least for the extreme top of the leaderboard. However, it does look like good drives gained was a big thing in greens and regulation. I would tend to think more so good drives gained because these greens are large. So if we sort here, we've got a 6.5, an 8.9, a 10.9 in fairways, but not a lot of correlation here. You got a couple of miscuts very high. We go on the good drives. Again, you got your cut makers a little bit, or miscut a little further down. Greens, again, these miscuts are pretty darn high up there. Not the highest in terms of correlating success. So not really much here. I would say perhaps the good drives gained, but I would not feel terribly confident in it if I was only to use 1 year's worth of historical data. Fortunately, we have more. As you can see, in 2021, distance did not matter nearly as much as it did last year. Again, 3 players negative in good drives gained, 2 in greens. You got an 8, a little bit kind of spotty correlation again. Spotty correlation, a 10.2. There's not a lot here that I am seeing in terms of necessary ball striking. Whether we're looking at fairways or greens, distance, anything really. Let's see, in 2020, again, top 19 due to ties. Now, the fairways were a little bit more important. You do have a couple of disasters in that regard in Will Gordon and Nick Watney in 2020, but the fairways were a little bit more important, representing in the good drives gained as well. You did have a 10.1 in good drives gained, DJ Trahan, but again, when you sort on it, that's just not a lot of correlation there. Greens, 9.9, and it's a lot heavier of correlation. I don't see much here. And that's what we kind of saw last night in Microsoft Excel. Everything was negative in terms of relation to other full field courses. I believe it was fairways that was slightly above 0. And I have removed some of those. I've removed the 2017 year, or the 5th year back, to prep for this upcoming year. So only 4 years now. But anyway, there's not a lot here. So we'll take a look at a few different things. I don't see much in terms of necessary use in a mixed condition model. So when we look at easy, let's take a look at easy courses. Let's take a look at good drives gained. I think that's where I'm leaning right now, if I had to guess. But again, I'm not terribly confident in it. So your top good drives gained players when a round is easy have been Aaron Rai, Ryan Armour, Hayden Buckley, Matthew Neesmith, JJ Spawn, David Lipsky, Tyler Duncan, Andrew Putnam, Will Gordon, and Justin Suh. Again, Mark Hubbard has withdrawn. I do want to take a look again quickly at Seaside, see what scrambling is. It's about tour average, 57.49, 57.94, slightly lower. So I don't think scrambling is going to be a big deal, especially since the tournament is generally easy. So I don't have a great feel for scrambling either. Be interested to hear your take. Put it in chat, put it in the comments. Do you think there is something that I am missing in terms of the fairways and greens view that I think, or that you think should be given more credence that I am not? But I'm not seeing much here. I'll look at short courses as well. Take a look at good drives gained. Your leaders in good drives gained when a course is short has been Russell Knox, Ryan Armour, Matthew Neesmith, Joel Damon, Hayden Buckley, Aaron Rai, Andrew Putnam, Cameron Percy, J.J. Spawn, and Sean O'Hare. Some overlap here. Aaron Rai was number 1 in good drives gained when it was easy. He's top 10 or 5th, tied for 5th. When it is short, Hayden Buckley's been up there. I think Ryan Armour was top 10 for both. Now, most of his coming in the fairways. I mean, he's number 1 in fairways when it is short. Not necessarily the best at hitting greens when it's short. But there's a look at this page view, and if I were making the mixed condition model right this instant, I don't think I would have anything from this page view in here. That might be wrong, and we'll double check it in Microsoft Excel later. There's not a lot I'm seeing here. There's just not. So instead, let's move to something a lot more interesting. Let's go to proximity. And last night we were talking about the 2 ranges that looked like they could be the most important. That would be the 125 to 150 and 150 to 175, as they produce the most approach shots from that length and most in relation to the average tour event. So when we look at proximity, the top 21 total procs does appear to be a pretty significant thing. Look here, you have a couple of bigger numbers, Cameron Smith, Charles Howe III down here, but the other 2 are pretty darn close to field average. 20 feet over 4 rounds, 9.5 feet over 4 rounds. But in terms of a specific length, looks to be all over the place. Particularly last year, maybe the 175 to 200, 75 to 100 is actually fairly strong. Look at all these zeros that are in red. That's actually looking to be the strongest. But when you sort on it, it's not exactly the strongest in terms of correlation. 125 to 150. I mean, you got some cut makers here. Now, Chad Ramey was very good at that range, but missed the cut. But you have a decent run of cut makers with some high finishes in the 125 to 150, 150 to 175, a little less. But you got some big numbers here. Like, look, Taylor Gooch, there's, okay, so looky there. He was your winner. He was the leader by far in 150 to 175. So that's important to note. That is important to note. He also led in 200 plus. I don't think that's going to be a big factor. Both of these courses are short. This would signify the par 5s, though, going for them in 2. So your proximity from 200 plus, that makes a little more sense. But seeing the margin in which he was leading this field, that's really, really high. 100 to 125, like, he was very good, but he was almost doubled by Lonto Griffin in that. So 150 to 175, perhaps a slight edge. Last year, we'll move to 2021. Take a look at its proximity. Let's highlight the top 17 so you can see them all. Again, total procs, a little bit less than last year's. 150 to 175 does look to be somewhat the strongest. Now, Robert Shrebb, your winner, was very poor in it. Decent amount of correlation here, other than David Hearn. 125 to 150, not particularly strong. 150 to 175. Oh, wow, look at this. Okay, there you go. So even though Robert Shrebb was very poor in it from this length when he won in 2021, look at the top performers at proximity 150 to 175. That is a lot of correlation here. You do have a middling from Sepp Straka, clunker from Kevin Streelman, Joel Damon, clunker to middling, depending on your definition. But you got some, there's a top 10, a top 5, a top 10, top 10. That's fairly strong. Let's see if 2020 shows off the 150 to 175 as well. We'll do the top 19 due to ties. Again, total procs looks to be something. You have a couple of players. Alex Noren was fairly close to field average, still a little below it, but a lot of green here. I don't see a whole lot in 2020 in terms of 150 to 175, but if we sort on it, again, you kind of have your cut makers, not as strong clearly as 2021, but you have your cut makers. So you got Castro right about in the middle down here. We go 125 to 150. Again, Davis Love about the middle, 100 to 125. A lot less so in terms of 75 to 100. So I would think it's the 150 to 175, maybe a little bit of total procs as well. But the 150 to 175 is what was being backed last night in terms of in Microsoft Excel as well. So I will bring this back in now. Since July 1st, I'm going to sort on total procs and we'll scan across to the 150 to 175. Your top total procs players since July 1st have been Kevin Streelman, Ryan Armour, Tom Hoagie, Russell Knox, Joel Damon, Paul Haley, Justin Suh, Brian Stewart, Camilo Villegas, Trey Mullinax, and Grayson Sigg. If we scan across to the 150 to 175, Ryan Armour, number 2 total, number 2 in 150 to 175. It's very, very strong. Strong combination here for the RSM. Joel Damon's top 30, 150 to 175. Justin Suh, Trey Mullinax, somebody who I've had an eye on all week, leading into when the odds were revealed this morning. If we sort on that 150 to 175, goes Justin Lauer, Ryan Armour, Justin Rose, Eric Barnes, Doc Redman, Ryan Moore, Charlie Hoffman, Brendan Todd, Jonathan Bird, and Justin Suh. Okay. Interesting to see So somebody like Doc Redman is atrocious in seemingly every single proximity except for 150 to 175. So if 150 to 175 does indeed become important, keep an eye on Doc Redman, I suppose. A little bit Eric Barnes as well. He's very good also from 125 to 150, but pretty bad otherwise. Okay. Justin Lauer's no slouch, 26th in total procs, best at this specific length. We talked about Ryan Armour, second and second. Justin Rose, 20th and third. Ryan Moore's not bad, 28th and 7th. Look, Justin Suh, 8th and 11th. That's a very strong combination. Siwoo is withdrawn. Jason Day, 25th and 12th. So there's a few names in terms of proximity. The interesting case study this week will be Doc Redman, since he has been so very good from 150 to 175 coming into this week. And if my inclination is correct that the 150 to 175 proximity is the most important, then it should play better for him. So interesting to note there. But now let's go to some obvious things here, or at least when I say obvious, they should be much more clear or apparent. Let's go into the par threes. Both courses have 2 par threes that measure 200 to 225. Plantation has 2 measure here. Seaside has 2 measure here. So you would guess that the 200 to 225 par threes are going to be the most important. And I'm going to tell you right now that is absolutely the case. Par threes, fairly important. Fairly important. You had a 4.3 that might have been the tops or close to it. 5.7 from Neesmith. Let's see. Again, these are coming from the Plantation. You had a 3, 2.7, and a 3. You sort here. Vegas is your first miscut. Decent amount of correlation here. 175 to 200. I mean, you had miscuts a lot closer. 150 to 175. They were up in here. So I'd give the edge to the 200 to 225. 2021. Highlight the top 17. Look at that. Even though these numbers aren't big, still, there was only one player that was negative in terms of par 3s. Interesting to note. Only 2 negative and 150 to 175, but those numbers don't look too big. 2.8, 3, 2.5. Okay, so 175 to 200 was the bigger number. So 200 to 225 wasn't a big deal at all in 2021, considering the two leaders missed the cut. Again, still not very strong here when you have missed cuts that high. Missed cuts still somewhat high. And then 2020, let's see if 2020 gives us more clarity. Yeah, already I'm seeing a 4 in 2020. But you see Tyler Duncan, Sebastian Munoz, they played these par 3s very well. I mean, we'll just highlight the top 13. Yeah. 150 to 175 is a 2.8, a 3, and a 4, including your winner. So I don't think it is overwhelming by any means. There is certainly an argument to put strokes gained par 3 in the mixed condition model, but I'm going to separate out the 200 to 225s for sure. So, double checking, make sure I don't have any filters. Since July 1st, your top par 3 performers have been Austin Cook, Aaron Baddeley, Scott Brown, Andrew Putnam, Stephan Jaeger, Joseph Bramlett, Chesson Hadley, Chris Stroud, Matthew Neesmith, and Kevin Yu, Chanon Yu. In the specific length, you really only have one player that's been atrocious. That's Joseph Bramlett. Like Aaron Baddeley here, second, very strong. Stephan Jaeger, 5th and 9th. Hubbard's withdrawn. Kevin Yu, 11th and 3rd. A little bit further down, Jonathan Bird, Grayson Sigg. Both of them are top 10 in 200 to 225. Bird's number 1, in fact, 200 to 225 par 3s. So a lot of correlation here across total par 3s and the 200 to 225. If you want to just focus on all 3 ranges of par 3s, like Austin Cook, strong. Scott Brown, strong. Trying to find players that, top 40 or so in all. That really might be the only 2 or 3 that are strong in all 3. I mean, like, you might want to consider Andrew Putnam. He's 56th in one of them. So he's not the best. I mean, he's just kind of good at one, but excellent and very good at the other 2. So, but there's a look at the par 3s. Definitely going to have just strokes gained par 3 in general. Going to separate out the 200 to 225. I still believe it is the most important length of par 3 here at Seaside. We'll move to par 4s, and we saw last night graphically that it was the 400 to 450, and in Microsoft Excel it was both 400 to 450 and 350 to 400. 350 to 400 now makes more sense because of the Plantation Course when we looked at that. So again, last year, I mean, just the amount of par 4 importance in general, you just have to play them. 70% or roughly thereabouts of the holes on tour are par 4s. But look here, only 2 negative in terms of 400 to 450. Really only 3 negative in 350 to 400. Top number being a 6.5. Oh my gosh, that is. I mean, even if you include Vincent Whaley, like that's a lot of strong correlation. You got a 40th from Lonto and a clunker from Vincent Whaley, but everything between there is and above is very strong. So 6.5, 10.5. Holy smokes, that's a lot of strong correlation too. Oof. 400 to 450 definitely had the edge last year. They're both strong, but definitely the 400 to 450. Again, more just you have to play the par 4s well, all the green in here. Top 17 due to ties. Only one negative, only two negative, and one was essentially field average here. You had a 5.8, a lot less correlating. 7.2 and very strong. Oh my gosh, there's not a missed cut for quite a while on the scroll. So 400, 450 has been very strong both years. 350 to 400 is somewhat, but definitely the 400 to 450. Tyler Duncan, you're probably your leader in. Oh, okay, Brendan Todd. So yeah, okay. Your top four performers all finished top 4 in a various order in 2020 in terms of strokes gained par 4. So you know that's going to be a part of it. 350 to 4, you have an 8.8. Not as strong. I mean, it's very strong up top, but then loses some correlation. But an 8.8, that's a very big number. 10 loses a little bit of correlation here. Okay, I think both will be important. I'm definitely separating out the 400 to 450. I probably will the 350 to 400. Just put a little bit more emphasis in the 400 to 450, and par 4s total are just going to be a thing. So your top par 4 performers since July 1st have been Tony Finau, Taylor Montgomery, Trey Mullinax, Ben Griffin, J.J. Spawn, Andrew Putnam, S.H. Kim, Brian Harmon, Tom Hoagie, and Justin Lauer. You scan across players that are good in both. Tony Finau, 3rd and 18th. Taylor Montgomery, 24th and 2nd. Ben Griffin, 26th and 1st. Tom Hoagie, 14th and 7th. Brendan Todd, 14th and 22nd. McCarthy, 27th and 10th. So there's some names for you. Ooh, down here, don't want to miss Matt Kuchar either. He's 24th in total, but 17th and 12th at the two ranges of par 4s. So that's another player to keep an eye on this week or to consider, with par 4s being pretty darn important and Matt Kuchar being very good at the two specific lengths of par 4s. Don't ignore Matt Kuchar. But there's a look at your par 4 performances. Again, I'm putting more emphasis in the 400 to 450. Like, if I were to make the mixed condition model now, I would have some percentage in par 4s. I would do 10% in 400 to 450 and 5% in 350 to 4, for example. And that's, again, just off the cuff, off the top of my head. Not having any idea what my mixed condition model is going to look like. But there's a look at your par 4 performances. Finally, we'll move to par 5s and then start looking at some specifics in Microsoft Excel, including last year's mixed condition model. So, last year, par 5 performance, you had a 2.2, 4.5, 1.1. Hopefully you're seeing that it's just the 550 to 600s that are the biggest factor in terms of par 5s here at the RSM 2021. Par 5s, you had a 3.3, a 4.3, 0.9. But if you sort on this, you've got your cut maker. You do have one missed cut here, but you got cut makers decent. I can say decent. Somewhat lukewarm correlation, whereas the 500 550 has none. He had 3 missed cuts, no single-digit finishes for a long while. So that's the way the par 5s are looking. Not even going to go to 2020. So par 5 efficiency. Your top performers at par 5s, 550 to 600 yards since July 1st. Stephen Yeager, Tony Finau, Justin Lauer, Kyle Westmoreland, Cameron Champ, Ben Griffin, Joseph Bramlett, Eric Cole, Taylor Pendrith, and Dean Burmester. So we're starting to get a lot of overlap on players. I mean, Finau's probably been there a lot. Yeager has been there a lot tonight. Justin Lauer has been there a lot tonight. Ben Griffin as well. I think this might be the first or second time we've said Taylor Pendrith. Bramlett's been up there now a little bit. Dean Burmester, first time we've said him after a very disappointing Houston Open. Okay. I do want to take a quick look at putting. Putting specific. Just a very quick look to see if there is a range that might give us an edge here. When I did this on Twitch earlier today, I definitely found that one of the ranges that I used for the Houston Open was correct and one was not. So that is, that's another reason why hopefully you decide to come by on and watch on Twitch to critique, especially for me, critiquing myself. That way, when I go to next year's Houston Open, we can be even more solid. Let's see, 15 to 20, okay, I suppose. But just putting in general, let's see, cut makers, yeah, 3.9 there. That's still fairly high. 3.5, but not strong correlation. No, 5.4, 2.5, 25 foot. No, not really. Okay. I did want to take a look at that. It does not appear that any specific range of putting will be the factor. Individually, it's just total putting, it looks like. I mean, shoot, in 2021 it was the short putts. But this was also the year that it was lightning. This is the one year that the greens were rated lightning speed. So it might not be the best year to look at. But interesting to look at, I suppose. Okay. So with that, let's go ahead, move on over to Microsoft Excel very quickly. We're going to first bring up the comparison course. And again, these percentages will have changed. I did remove 2018, so now I'm only factoring in 4 years. So the percentages changed. Let's take a look just casually across. Again, in terms of umbrella stats or strokes gained overview, it looks like it's all putting. I will have some amount of approach, probably just 5%, but I mean, it looks like there's nothing overwhelming in terms of importance except for maybe putting. Fairways and greens, again, everything's negative. Looks like fairways would be the biggest thing. I'm just very skeptical of greens mattering because these greens are so large. They are hit at such a high percentage that they seem to be deteriorated in terms of importance. I would have said good drives, but even that's one of the bigger numbers in this page view. So perhaps there's just nothing here. Perhaps there's nothing here. Again, would be curious to hear your all's take. Put it in the chat, put it in the comments. Pretty easy here. Birdies gained over the bogeys avoided. We saw that throughout the leaderboards. We're seeing it here as well. Par 3s, 7% more important against the average full field course. The 200 to 225s are just extremely important, 60.5%. Both courses have half of their par 3s that measure to this, so I'm going to separate that length out. That makes a lot of sense. Par 4s, Again, important. 350 to 400 and 400 to 450. Yes, I understand that this number is quite bigger, but there's only one hole on Seaside, the main course, that measures to this on the scorecard, whereas there are 9 that measure to this at Seaside, and Seaside's the course that they will be playing both days on the weekend. So I'm putting more emphasis into this, but 350 to 400 is going to be important. I'm pretty darn confident I'm going to separate this length out as well in the mixed condition model, the final mixed condition model. Par 5s, again, very deteriorated in terms of importance, except for the specific range, and even then they're slightly above full field course average. Proximity, again, this is where I'm getting the 150 to 175. That's just a big number. It's just a big number. All of the close distances are much more important than the average full field course, but this one's just so much more. It's surprising to see total procs be negative when total procs look to be a little bit of something. So perhaps it is just this specific length of approach shot. Perhaps. And then putting, we didn't see much. It's saying that the 20 to 25 footers are double the importance. You didn't really see it in terms of the numbers, at least in the prior 2 leaderboards. So if a specific length of putt matters, I'll be cold to it, but I'm not going to separate any putting like I did for Houston. But there's a look at the specifics to Seaside and Plantation by default, but Seaside. Let's take a look at the players this week and see who has performed well at these various metrics that we think are going to be good. Not that was weird. Sorry. That we think are going to be very important this week. So we will first sort on. Let's just sort on putting. It is the most important shot type here. So I won't separate out the players who have only played it once. I'm just going to highlight the players who have played it multiple times. So Denny McCarthy, probably no surprise, premier putter in the world. Patton Kazire has put this tournament extremely well, and he's performed well. Jason Day's been good. Brendan Todd. Let's see. Kevin Kisner, #1 putter on fast Bermuda greens. He's performed fairly well at this tournament. Akshay Bhatia. No, I did not. I have not checked Rob Bolton's Twitter since, I don't know, I guess roughly dinner, 6:30 Eastern. Because he normally puts out the field changes, and open qualifiers are considered field changes. I have not seen that, but good to note. Thanks for mentioning that, James. Thanks for jumping in chat like you always do when you're able to catch the show. But here are a look at the top putters historically, or at least in the past 5 years here at the RSM. Let's take a look now at birdies. Definitely want to look at birdies and bogeys, and specifically birdies, because that is the more important of the two. So your leaders in birdies: a Wyndham Clark, 3 for 3 at this tournament. Look at that. Webb Simpson, 4 for 4, average of a top 15. He's very high in the birdies. He's also higher in terms of birdies versus bogeys. In fact, you have to come down to, goodness gracious, look at this. Spawn is still technically above the bogeys. It's even, essentially, but you have to come down all the way to Aaron Rye down here before you have somebody that is higher in terms of birdies, or excuse me, higher in terms of bogeys than birdies. And there's a lot of pretty darn good success up here. Like I mentioned, Webb Simpson, Luke List has played this event extremely well. Zach Johnson, 5 for 5. Brendan Todd, 3 for 4. Patton Kazire, we mentioned. Brian Gay has played this event very well. Vaughn Taylor, John Huh. Nick Watney, not so much. Stuart Sink, definitely not so much. Chesson Hadley's been okay. So, quite clearly, birdies here. And those are the players that have performed the best at birdies gained at Sea Island Resort. Let's do par 3s and 4s. Proximity. I'm just going to focus on the specific lengths here. Par 3s, 200, 225. Seamus Power, surprisingly not have played this event all that well. He's missed the cut 3 out of 4 times. Okay, but he has performed well at the length of the par 3s. There's Webb Simpson again. Kevin Kisner, Michael Thompson. Robert Streb, 2-time winner, but the past 5 years he has missed the cut 3 of the 5 times. Denny McCarthy again. Trey Mullinax, Tyler Duncan, Ben Martin. Okay. Gosh dang it. Par 4s. Well, par 4s. I'm going to sort on the 400, 450. We'll take a look with the 350 to 4s as well. Let's see. J.J. Spawn, Zach Johnson, Webb Simpson, Will Gordon played the event very well. Look at Webb Simpson here. Both of them. Both of the short par 4s. Very important. And he's played them well. And he's the leading strokes gained total player the past 5 years. Spoiler alert, Webb Simpson will not be chalky. Foreshadowing, you probably need to consider Webb Simpson this week. This is just a Webb Simpson course. John Hunt played very well. Bird, not so much really. Streb, okay. Kisner, Hadley, Jason Day, Brian Stewart down here. Par 5s, just kind of want to do a quick look here. Hoffman, McGreevy, Ryan played all that much. Ben Martin. Woo, Hardy. So the par 5s. Oh, stupid. I'm looking at the wrong effing column. Don't mind me. I am a dumbass. Max McGreevy. Okay, David Lingmerth has played this event fairly well. Been playing the par 5s at the length good, well. Taylor Moore, his one time he played well. Jason Day. Matthew Neesmith, 3 for 3 with an average of a top 20. Good performance. Albertson finished 15th in his 1 year. Matt Wallace is 2 for 2. He's the best at the par 5s of the length here. Okay. Finally, the 150 to 175 procs. I'll sort on this one because that's way too hard to eyeball. I don't know what's spasm there with my mouse. Weird. Proximity. 150, 175. Okay. Sean O'Hare. He's played okay. 2 for 3. There's Will Gordon, Matthew Neesmith, Luke List, Jason Day. Peter Malnati, not so much. There's Webb. James Power did not play this event well. Zach Johnson, Hank Leviota, not as much. William McGirt, somebody to keep an eye on. If you want a long shot, maybe top 20 bet, kind of like William McGirt. I don't know his odds. He got into the field today with Mark Hubbard's withdrawal, but I can't imagine his odds would be very low. So he'd be an interesting, like top 10, top 20, top 10, top 20 placement bet if you are so inclined. Denny McCarthy. Okay. Let me sort this for you all. Oh gosh, what did I do? Go back to the best finish. We're going to end the show off like we do every Monday night, looking at my previous year's mixed condition model. So, how did I perform at the RSM last year? Well, being honest, I think it was pretty okay. Louis withdrew, so my top 6 players all made the cut to the worst finish was a 37th. Pretty strong. Vegas, I had some miscuts starting to creep in there as well. Now, Taylor Gooch did fall in my rankings a little bit. I had put some par 4 performance in here at 20%. That seems pretty darn high. You see, I did split out the 400 to 450. So that I'm on the same wavelength there. I did have 15% in Fast and Lightning Bermuda. Taylor Gooch was not the best coming into there. Okay. Greens, I had 15% in greens. Now he had definitely performed well there. I'm still not sold on greens. I did, so there's 10% I'm getting back. I had 10% on short courses. And Taylor Gooch was very good at short courses. So that worked out. There's 10% approach. I did 10% in opportunities. Very interesting. Okay. 10% in opportunities. As opposed, because I didn't do any birdies or bogeys. I just did opportunities. Okay. Gooch was pretty good in that. I am going to get 5% again back on the windy. So there's 15% at least that I'm getting back. 20% in par 4 seems a bit excessive. I could end up with more percent across all of the par 4s, but certainly not 20% in a category of par 4s. 15% in putting seems okay, but Taylor Gooch wasn't the strongest putter coming in, and he won. Greens was a big deal, and players performed well. I'm actually going to sort this very, very quickly for you all. I know we're going over a little bit on time, but I'm a little curious here. So, how did things look? So, the strokes gained total short was pretty darn strong. Approach decent at the top, I suppose. Yeah. Look at the 400 to 450. That was pretty darn strong right there. Okay. You do have a few more higher numbers in the greens than what I was seeing originally. So definitely going to get back at least 15% here. Not sure what I'm going to do with it. This might be a straight going from opportunities gained to birdies or better. Makes sense. But otherwise, this seemed like it was about what I'm thinking of for this year, and it worked out okay in terms of placement. Now, again, the winner, he was 27th. He wasn't drastically low in my rankings. So, okay. So there's a look at what I did last year for the RSM. We'll see how close I am or similar and results for this year. But I will leave you off on this. This is the specific performance for each player at the RSM the past 5 years. P and James, thanks for jumping in the various chats the way you do when you are able to catch the show. I always appreciate the support. Thanks to everyone out there who tunes in and watches, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, subscribing. I really appreciate it. A reminder that I will be live again tomorrow on Twitch, 10:30 a.m. I'm going to try to narrow down a little bit on the winners, but it'll be probably more so going through my thought experiment of making the mixed condition model, and then probably get an update on the wind a little bit. So I will be live again tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. And then a reminder for next week moving forward until the Tournament of Champions, essentially, I will be Tuesday and Friday evenings starting next week. Since the PGA Tour will be taking a break, I'm going to go back to last year's schedule of Tuesday evening, one show a week, but I am adding the Friday night chill stream, so I hope you consider dropping by for that as well. It is just open to the community, be a little bit of golf content, probably some gaming. We can just chat, whatever the community wants to discuss or partake in. So, for all of the wagers you have made so far this week for the RSM, for all of the wagers you're thinking about making so far this week at the RSM, until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.